themselves as a result of earning the certification, and 77% report that it's stuff that they would have not done otherwise. And again, it's sometimes we do get in our lane. I'm a certification professional by what I do, but also by what I'm doing in the industry that I'm doing it in. I'm having to present to you all. So I've even gone in and taken the ATD training certificate. So it does help you to not just keep your head down and focus on what you're doing. It helps you to see how what you do relates to the overall organization goals, but also makes you a more valuable employee. And this is also where some of these, is it worth it? 85.7% recommend pursuing the credential to others. So almost 9 out of 10 people do recommend it, who've gone through it, who've trudged through the preparation, who've sat down and taken that exam. Almost 9 people out of 10 would do it again or recommend others to do it. This one is specifically about organization, what it means to organizations. And also the last one, the part about employer support is important too. If you have a team of people who you think would be an asset to get certified, it does help with retention when you support them in their professional development. So across the board, work quality, productivity, their level of responsibility improved. Earning a certification just by the numbers here. A lot of times people ask, well, can I get a promotion, or how many people got a raise? And that's one of the things that the ROI Institute didn't really study, because that's really hard to measure, the fact that you earn the certification and you immediately get a raise. But there is some sort of career progression, and there are so many variables in either promotion, raise, or another job, or a job with greater responsibility and greater benefits. It's a lot harder, and some of those things you can find in our certificate stories we focused on back in October, and I can send you a link to those if you're interested on some of it's a lot of personal journey and whether it was of value to them. So let's dive into the certifications. We have 2. There's the Associate Professional in Talent Development, and that is more for our early career professionals. It also is for people who have a narrower focus. So outside the country, you see people who have a very narrow job responsibility. And so that's why a lot of people from the Middle East and China are looking at the APTD. But the eligibility requirement is 3 years of experience in talent development and 28 hours of professional development. The professional development piece is where you are the learner. So the first part, the left-hand side of the screen is where you were doing things, and the right-hand side of the screen is where you were the learner, where you were gaining knowledge. It's both for the APTD and CPTD. It's kind of a similar slide I'll show you in just a minute. But it's kind of, a certification is kind of a marriage of your work experience and the knowledge you've gained over time. The APTD is that 3-year level. And so that's the first hurdle that you have to cross in order to earn the certification. Everyone who sits for the exam has to have met this eligibility requirement. And it does need to be in the professional and organizational domains. And I just realized when I was building the slides, I did not do this. Hold on just a second. I'm going to click out of this and quickly go to the talent development capability model. And hopefully you are familiar with it. And hopefully you're still seeing my screen. You can go to td.org/capability model/access to access the model. This is the model by which everything at ATD is based. And I'm sure many things in your chapter is based on this. The programming, the conferences that National has, the books that we produce, everything we do is based on this model because it is based on what you all told us is important to know and be able to do to be a successful talent development professional. And we divided it into personal capabilities, professional capabilities, and organizational capabilities. And the exams themselves do cover all three domains, but the eligibility piece, what I was just talking about, the work experience and the professional development, we need to see them coming from the professional capabilities or organizational capabilities. And that's because that's where the meat of the exam is. Not that these personal capabilities are not important, because they are. Anybody from back last night, I went to Chick-fil-A, and some of the communication pieces that the associates at Chick-fil-A have are important for them, as well as for me, as well as for my postal worker who I just saw before coming on here. Some of the things do translate from industry to industry that are in that personal capability, but what it is that you all do as talent development professionals are really found or grounded in the professional capabilities and organizational capabilities, and that's where we need to see the professional development and the work experience come from. So let's go back to there. And so diving a little bit deeper in those professional capabilities and organizational capabilities, you can see some of those capabilities from which your work experience and education needs to come from. And this is not a heavy lift for a lot of you, because a lot of you are already an instructional designer, is already working in instructional design. They may be working in knowledge management and some of the learning management programs that you've got. The data and analytics is also in there. You're looking at consulting and business partnering, which you think of as something that a consultant would do. But if you are developing training for a different department, you are working and you are consulting and business partnering with other divisions in your organization. So some of the work is in there as well. And so if you look at some of the knowledge and skill statements underneath these capabilities, a lot of what you're already doing is found in here. And also the professional development that you're working on. If you've attended an ATD conference or seen a webcast, many of them are linked back to these capabilities, so it's easy to find. We also have a one-pager on some commonly found or commonly used professional development that people use that I can send later. I don't have a link to it right this second, but the work experience and the professional development on your application need to come from these two domains. And I know this is an awful slide, but this is a quick and dirty way to show you everything about APTD. It's the youngest one. It was established in 2017 to fill a hole, because the CPTD or the CPLP at that point was at 5 years, and so many people kept coming to us saying, I've got an early career professional. I've got someone who's been with us a couple of years. She's not quite ready, or he's not quite ready for the CPLP, but I'd love something else. And so that's one of the reasons why we developed it. It is a 2-hour exam with 115 multiple choice questions. The passing score is 500 on a scale of 200 to 800. The pass rate right now is about 70%. It's about 68.3%. So every 7 people who take it, every 10 out of every 10 people, 7 pass, which is not a bad statistic. So far, and I just heard the number this morning because we were on the phone with China, and they asked what the lifetime earned APTD is, and it's just slightly over 1,000 right now. The largest population outside the US is in the Middle East, or Saudi Arabia specifically, and China. And as far as prep time, it takes about 3 to 6 months. Your mileage may vary depending on how you came into the industry. If you came into the industry as an accidental trainer, you might be on the higher end of that 6 months, because there is some theory stuff here. It's not that we're going to ask you what does ATD stand for. but we may ask you in what type of situation would you use ATD, or a specific function of ATD. And so it is, there is some knowledge, if you think of Bloom's taxonomy, and I'll go into this in just a second. There is some recall on the APTD exam, but there's some application as well. And to recertify every 3 years, you need to have at least 40 hours of professional development. And that can come in so many ways. You can, on the job experience, being a member of your chapter also gets you points for doing that. Reading a book that has been published since you were last certified or last recertified counts. And so there are all kinds of ways that you can get recertification points. It's not all things that you've got to pay for. Example, a library book that you could check out. So it's not a money grab, and it doesn't have to be just ATD stuff. There are other things that you can do, chapter events that you can do that would count toward that recertification piece. CPTD, this is a similar slide to the APTD because they are similar in the way they're set up, but the CPTD is a heftier. It's the more senior of our two credentials. It takes 5 years of experience and 60 hours of professional development. So there is a little bit more weight to this one in many, many ways. I will say that the average number of years that a applicant has coming in is usually a lot more than 5. More recently, it has skewed down a little bit more, but when I first started at ATD, it was around, I think, 12 years of experience that people were applying. But the minimum is 5 years. And again, it has to be your work experience and your professional development need to come from those two domains, professional and organizational. And here's that busy slide. It is the older of the two certifications. It was established in 2006. It's, again, that heftier exam. It's a 3-hour exam. There is a 10-minute break in the middle. The APTD does not have a prescribed break, but the CPTD does. There are 90 multiple choice questions and 10 case management questions. And those case management questions are kind of formatted like the Choose Your Own Adventure books that were popular in the 90s. It's a multi-step question where you are asked, you're not able to go, it might be 5 or 6 steps in that question, and you answer step 1 and you move on to step 2, and you're not able to go back to step 1 because you may be given a few answers in step 2. And so there are 10 of those on the exam. Again, the pass score is 500 on a scale of 200 to 800. And the pass rate, surprisingly enough, is a little higher than the APTD. It's 73.7 right now. It does vary from month to month. The APTD is given in odd numbered months, so January, March, May. The CPTD is given in even numbered months throughout the year. And so it does fluctuate a little bit. If you come to one of our presentations, say at ICE next year, you may see us telling you it's a different pass rate. It does fluctuate just a tiny bit depending on the month, but that's about where it is right now. Over 3,000 have been awarded since its inception, and it's a little bit longer to study for. People we survey, and ATD surveys people to death sometimes, but we do survey everyone who takes the exam to ask them, how long did it take you? And people tell us that it's between 6 and 9 months. That could be every weekend, that could be, but the way we ask it is 6 to 9 months. And to recertify, it is every 3 years, and you have to have 60 hours because it is at a higher level. Let me go into that in just a second. Let's compare APTD and CPTD. And we have to do it on a couple of different levels because it's kind of like comparing apples and oranges. Let's consider the eligibility first. This is just purely quantitative. If you've got 3 years of experience and that's it, you might want to look at the APTD. It does help if you start with the APTD first and move on to the CPTD. Not only is it good for people who are nervous test takers who don't typically do well on a standardized exam because you're doing it in bite-sized chunks, but if you earn the APTD first, earning the APTD completely satisfies that 60 hours of professional development that you need to earn the CPTD. And so let's say you're at 4 years of experience and you've got the 28 hours and you go for the APTD, you could go ahead and go for the CPTD when you've gotten the 5 years of experience and not have to have done the 60 hours of professional development because you did the APTD first. Let's look at quantitative. Oh, I just got this confused. Sorry. The APTD, like I said, is at the knowledge and application level. The exam is. Again, we're not going to ask you what does ATD stand for. That's just a crazy question. But we may ask you when would you apply ATD or a specific aspect of ATD. The CPTD questions are more at the application and analysis level. They are at that higher level of understanding. And the career aspirations are a little different too. If you are an instructional designer and that's all you really want to do, that's your happy place. You don't ever want to be a manager, that you don't want to do that stuff. You don't want to get into managing people. APTD might be your sweet spot. But if you do have management aspirations or want a broader role in the organization, CPTD might be where you want to go. A little bit about timing and resources also is part of this. How much time do you have to devote to this? And maybe you've made it a goal and you've worked it out with your manager that you need to do it by May or you need to do it by June or first half of 2023. It might be better that you go for the APTD instead of the CPTD. Also your resources, depending on whether your company is supporting you. It is a little bit more expensive, the APTD versus the CPTD, just the registration fee and some of the prep products that are out there. You also might want to think about your professional support, what study groups are available, and I'll talk about that in just a second. And it may be that you and a colleague want to go through it together and he is wanting to do the APTD. And so that might help you say, well, maybe I'll start with the APTD first. So there's a number of considerations to do. And a lot of this is personal preference, where you are and what's going on personally and professionally. It may be that you, for me, and I often talk about this, back when I was a young certification professional, I was on a team of 3 others and I got the PMP and it really made people notice me on that team. And I was elevated to be the lead of that team based on getting the PMP. And at the time, the certification industry did not have a certification for me to earn. And the closest thing for me at that time was the project management professional certification. So earning a certification for me professionally at that point was something that I needed to distinguish myself on that team. It may be that you just want to validate your skills. You're already where you want to be, but you kind of want to have that outside stamp of approval that, hey, I know what I'm doing. There's so many personal reasons that trump the reasons that I've shown you on these slides that you need to think about in doing some navel gazing and thinking about where you want to go. So how do you study? How do you prepare? And I often go back to my project management. Some of the classes that I took to earn the PMP talked about also thinking about, breaking it down to its simple level. You're doing a home project. Let's say you're putting together an entertainment center for your family room, And what are some things you need to do? And step one to any goal is to make a plan to achieve it. So even, my TV console in my living room, I've got to make a plan. Think about the financial implications. Am I going to go high end? Am I going to go with cement blocks and plywood? What am I going to do? So to get the TV and all those things that you got to set up. And then also, what do you have and what do you need? Do the gap analysis. We have 2 study guides that are free on our website, and they're linked there. And I'll send these slides after this presentation. But there's the APTD study guide and the CPTD study guide. And oh my gosh, they are wealth of information. There is a gap analysis in it that is based on the content outline. And you can go through that and look line by line, capability by capability. This is what I know. I feel pretty confident that I know about this. And so there's a ranking of what you know, and then the confidence ranking. And at the end, you can kind of see where your gaps are. And so knowing where your gaps are and knowing where your strengths are is always a good place to start. Those study guides also just have, they have the content outline. There is a resource reading list in that content outline or in that study guide that goes capability by capability. And there's probably 150 books in that resource reading list. And I don't want anybody to faint over that number. We don't expect you to read all of the books to be prepared for this exam. They're just suggested reading. They are books that the item writers used to write the items. But it may be that for me, I whispered earlier that math is not my strong suit, that data and analytics might be a weakness for me. And so for me, if I was looking at the APTD or CPTD, I might want to look at the books under data and analytics and see if there's one that either I could check out at the library or I could invest in to buy, to have on hand, especially since I know it is a known weakness that I might want to look at to study to help me with that knowledge gap in data and analytics. Also, there's a study planning guide in that study guide. So if you're not studying with a group, if you're on your own, I'll let you know I have 2 certifications in the PMP. I did completely by myself in my spare bedroom. I had books spread out on the bed, and I would constantly go in there and read and quiz myself and study. The second certification I did with group. I did a group study group, and it was very helpful to do that as well, because one of the things that you have to think about with certification is it's not just the knowledge, it's how to apply it. And so it may be that, and I keep going back to that instructional designer, it may be that you're an instructional designer and you don't have a lot of experience in talent management, but somebody in the study group does. And they can tell you how to apply things, or they can give you examples of how in their experience they have used some of the things that are in that content outline. So that you can help remember the CPTD is at the application and analysis level of learning. And so being in a study group does help. There are study resources out there. The Talent Development Body of Knowledge, the TDBOK, that was just released back in 2020, is a great resource to start with. I don't want to disparage it at all. It is a great resource for any talent development professional, but I will warn you that it does talk a lot about the what and very little about the why or how. It'll talk about what a needs assessment is, but it won't tell you how. And remember, the exam is more about the how than the what. So it does help you with some of the what that you don't know. We also have practice tests that are available. There are sample questions back in that study planning guide. There's about 10 for each one to give you a sense of what kind of questions are going to be on the exam, but we do have practice tests. We have Zoom calls that we do all the time. In fact, they sneak up on me by mistake. We have Zoom calls where there's staff that staff the Zoom call. And then we have Zoom calls where there are APTDs and CPTDs that we have asked to volunteer their time to talk to you about how they studied. We also have webinars. You can get a list of those webinars there. And then there's handbooks. Those handbooks are a little different than the study guides because those handbooks talk about the policies. How much time do you have to take the exam once you register? 18 months. What happens when I'm unsuccessful? Well, you can retest if you have time left on that 18-month eligibility. I've changed my mind. Can I get a refund? All of those answers are in those handbooks as far as the policies. The study guides help you with study once you've started on that path. Here are some more resources that you have. There's an active candidates page with all kinds of great resources. Sue Caden, I don't know whether you remember her. She was with ATD many, many years. She just retired. She established this active candidates page for us, and it is a wealth of information. And we also have LinkedIn preparation groups. We have one for APTD and CPTD. And it's great to find a study buddy from there or crowdsource a question. ATD Education also has prep courses. They are huge. They're comprehensive, robust, and all in one place. It includes access to the TD box. It also includes the practice tests. You don't have to buy them separately. There are live sessions where there's a facilitator talking about things that you can ask questions about. Let's say you don't know the difference between cognitivism and behavioralism. You can ask somebody during those calls. There's self-paced content that you can go through and discussion boards that can help you with study tips. I will say they are pricey, but it is a big bang for your buck if you are going to go that route. Also, ATD chapters have study groups, and these are volunteer-led efforts to crowdsource content. They have taken, in many cases, our study guides and gone week by week or by week and come up with content and found volunteers to facilitate the content based on what the topic is for that week. Those are a lot lower cost or free. And the pandemic was bad to us in many, many ways, but one of the ways that it was good is that many of these chapters have opened their borders so that you don't have to live in the Rocky Mountain area in order to join the Rocky Mountain study group. And I have a link later to the active study groups that are out there. So how to test, and I know I'm kind of getting close because I did want to leave some time for questions, but how to test, there are two different ways to test. Again, because of the pandemic, we rolled out the changes to the CPTD and the APTD and the new content outline in the year of COVID. So in 2020, all this stuff went live. And at the same time, we were hearing that everything was shutting down. I just remember getting on I-95 one weekend, and I don't know whether you're used or you know anything about the East Coast, but I-95 is the main corridor from Maine to Florida. And there was no one for miles. And it was crazy. But at the same time, we were developing these exams and we were told that we needed to go to a online delivery method. And if you had told me that we were going to be thinking about doing that back even in 2018, I would have said you were crazy. We would never do that. But it forced our hand. And so there are two ways to do it. Remote or the test center. And as you can see, the test center, I took this picture from a Pearson web page. This is the way it looks. There is a proctor who sits in a booth who is basically watching you. You walk in, you have to show them your pockets, you have to pull out your pockets, you show your ID, you show them your watch, you take off your watch and show that you've not put any notes behind your watch, again, security protocols, because there are other high stakes exams that are being given in this center. You can get headphones. You see the gentleman in the picture, he has headphones that he may be listening to something, but it also may be helpful to him because somebody next to him may be doing an essay type exam. So you hear the tap, tap, tap of the keys. There are pros and cons to both. The one on the right is remotely via own view. And you don't have to have an office as stark as that, but the proctor in the on view environment will ask you to take a picture of what's in front of you, take a picture of what's beside you, to see the walls, basically to make sure that you don't have notes up on the walls. You can have, like I have pictures on my walls. You can have pictures. You don't have to take everything out, but it does need to be a room where you can control the environment. Close the door or make sure that no one's at home. If you're say in a studio apartment, make sure no one's at home. So those are the two ways, and I don't know whether you have any colleagues, but in China and Japan right now, because of some of their protocols that they have put in place by their government, the servers have to be in those two countries for the exams to be run remote proctored, and Pearson servers are not in Japan or China right now. So you cannot remote test in those two countries. So here are the pros and cons of testing at a Pearson VUE test center. You can leave the IT setup to the pros. You walk in and everything's done for you. That's kind of good if you've got test anxiety. You don't have to worry about your environment, that something's going on, that your contractors are coming today. But there is more limited appointment availability. The test centers are available from usually 9 a.m. in the morning until about 5 at night. Some are a little bit later than that, maybe 7 p.m. And it could be that you're a night owl and you would rather start testing at 9 o'clock at night. That's when your day is over maybe and you're able to concentrate on an exam. You do have, you're in a carrel, and so you are kind of close to somebody. Pearson does have COVID protocols in place where they do sanitize the station between test takers. You can get up and stretch at a test center, or you can get up and go to the bathroom. The clock continues to run, so you do lose a little time, but y'all don't want to hear this, but I've got a nervous bladder. And so during my 2 test taking attempts, I had to go to the bathroom 100 times. And I know they thought that I was cheating. I truly wasn't. I just had a nervous bladder. But at a test center, you are able to get up and leave. And the proctor will just check you to make sure that you didn't have something hidden in the bathroom. But a con for it is that it's an unfamiliar setting. So if you do take comfort in the familiar, it might not be something for you. Testing remotely is the safest option considering the pandemic, but you've got to control your environment. And that means you've got to have a secure internet connection. And in this day and age, I hate to say it, but you've got to have your own computer. We do recommend using your own personal laptop or your own personal computer, because your workplace computer has firewalls and safeguards that your company administrators have put on your computer. And the number one reason a remote exam fails in this, the number one problem we have is that people go into the exam using their work laptop. And in the middle of the exam, the organization installed firewall kicks up and closes the exam. And here is all of your preparation, all of your money, all of your anxiety, and the exam has shut down. And it's because you're using a work laptop, or your internet goes down. Somebody ran into a transformer down the street and your internet went down. And so that's on you. So you do control your environment in every way. But that's good in some ways, because it could be that you're happy in your home, you're happy in your nest, and that's where you're most comfortable testing. There are more flexible testing hours. It is 24 hours a day. So if you're doing some sort of shift work and you're used to third shift hours, it could be that you're happy to test at 2 in the morning. Also, as a con, you're not able to stand up and leave the confine of that camera. The CPTD exam does have that 10-minute break where you can get up and go to the bathroom, but the APT does not. So if you need to bend down to turn off the heater that's down at your feet, you need to let the proctor know that you're going to be bending down to do that. Because if she or he, the proctor, notices any type of suspicious activity, they'll first ask to see what's going on. But if they question you at all, they will end their exam. And that's a risk that you're taking. So there's pros and cons to both. And ultimately, what's the best one for you? It's going to be how you best perform. Think about how you've done it before in the past and what's going to work for you now. Finding out more, there's so many ways. You can email certification@td.org. The certification team, we're actually a separate organization underneath the umbrella of ATD, and there are 3 of us on that team, and we all have access to that certification inbox. So if you need an answer quick, you can email certification@td.org, or you can email me, hbats@td.org, or you can look at the certification pages, or you can do it your own. Ask an APTD or CPTD there in your chapter. Have them talk to you about it, what the pros and cons they thought of it. Maybe they can help you with it, or you can come to one of our remote mentoring sessions. They're usually once a month, and I can point you in the direction of the schedule for that, so you can come to that. I can stand up here and talk about this until I'm blue in the face, but I've not been through it for the CPTD or the APTD, and you may want to hear from an actual person who's been through it. So having said all of that, I've covered a lot. I've covered the value of it. I've covered some intricacies of the APTD and CPTD and how to prepare and the differences between remote versus in person. Do y'all have any questions?
I do, ma'am. So I'm in the process of transitioning out of the Army. I've done a lot of training while in the Army. However, I don't know how to relate all that into the application process to show that I have that training knowledge. So how would is there something out there where I could do that, or would that be through the chapter?
It would probably be through me, because what I could do is set up an appointment, a one-on-one with you, and walk you through the application and show you where for your work experience you would put your titles or the roles that you had. The exam or the application itself doesn't have a section where you have to really write out what you did. I mean, there's a small section, but it does ask you to list the capabilities where you had experience. So for training, you would put training and facilitation. You may put maybe even performance improvement, because you were responsible for taking a soldier from point A to point B and training them. There may be even some other capabilities that you would list there. As far as your professional development, do you remember or have access to any of the courses that you took? Because was there anything that you did to learn how to be a trainer?
So I do have my JST, which is the Joint Service Transcripts, which also identifies where I became a master driver trainer instructor. So that was probably the biggest training tool that I received. But it's a lot of the positions that I was in, it wasn't 100% dedicated to the training, but those were all additional responsibilities with it. So it's confusing on how to get it all aligned properly, because this is the field I want to go into. It's most of my passion is in the training field.
you're not alone in this at all, and you may feel like you're alone, but so many, that's where the term, or we kind of joked about it first, or at least when I was starting, I felt like it was a accidental trainer is the term. Because so many people start in one career. And I know a lady right now, sweet, sweet, sweet. She's a dentist, and was a little tired of going into people's mouths. Not really that, I mean, just she wanted to do something else. And what else can I do? And she was hired by Align Technologies, the people who do the Invisalign technologies. And she's now a trainer for them, even though she was like you know, a soldier in a different life. She was a dentist in a different life. And now she does more and more training. She was still doing dentistry as she was training other dentists how to do the Invisalign technology. So other people become trainers or get a passion for talent development if they are in another field. Another example is a firefighter who are asked to do the onboarding training for the young recruits that are coming in. They get a passion for doing this. And so how do you prove it? It may be something that you're not doing full time, and that's fine. Neither of the eligibility requirements for the APTD or CPTD say that you have to have done it full time. And that is, if you feel like you're ready for the exam, that's one thing that we did not put in the eligibility requirements, was that it had to be full time.
Okay, thank you. Just plan on getting an email.
Okay, I'm here. Do any of you have anybody on your teams that might be interested? I know that there is a group rate that does discount the prep and the registration fee, and it doesn't necessarily need to be a team. Say you're at a company, we do that for a lot. But if somebody in the chapter would like to go, if you have at least 5 in the chapter who would like to go through it, there is a discounted rate for at least 5 people. I don't see any other questions.
Well, I got another question, and it's
Okay.
for Rachel. Are you the chapter advisor program for manager for Nebraska? Or because you mentioned Nebraska, so I'm curious on what your role is.
Yeah, yep. So I'm the director of career resources here with the Nebraska chapter. So if there's any questions or anything that you have about our chapter or different events that we have going on, definitely reach out. And if I don't know the answer, can get you connected here with another board member.
Okay, that's awesome, because I was doing a lot of research last night because I just found out about the ATP or ATD last night. So I'm looking at trying to join the chapter and then going through this process, because like I said, the training development is where I want to go once I'm done with the Army.
Great. I'll send you over my email so you can feel free to email me any questions that you have. We can get you connected.
All right, thank you.
You know, also that, I don't know whether you know this, but there's the certification reimbursement, or the COOL program, that you can go through the Army.
As of right now, because I am in the process of transferring out, I no longer qualify for the COOL.
Okay.
So unfortunately, that won't assist me at this moment.
Sorry, just a little too late.
Well, if that's all for questions, Holly, thank you so much for taking some time to talk with, attendees here today. And we really appreciate the information. And if any questions about the certification, feel free to reach out to Holly, reach out to myself and the board here at ATD Nebraska. But happy Employee Learning Week. We're happy you joined us. We do have a happy hour going on this evening from 5 to 7 over at DJ's Dugout in Miracle Hills. So we'd love to see your faces. Obviously, the weather isn't great today. It looks like by 5 to 7 it will be clear, but obviously make a judgment call there. We'd love to see you, but understand if you can't make it. So
can I ask a question?
Yes.
Sorry, I got a frog in my throat today. My question is, sorry, last minute, real quick. If you take the certification prep course, do those hours count toward the professional development hours? I
Yes,
just wanted to verify. Okay, cool.
20 of the hours for APTD, and I think it's 22 of the hours or 23 of the hours for the CPTD course count.
All right. Thank you. I expect
You're
to get an email
welcome.
from me too.
Okay, yay! I love it. Thank you all. Go have a good week.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, ladies. Y'all have a great weekend.